Year 1893, a 12-year-old child in Germany loses his parents forever. Before leaving, he leaves some money for his parents. But in the future, during his travels, that money is also stolen. But even after losing everything, he had one thing left, his unstoppable passion for watches. And on the basis of this passion, he created the world's greatest watch company. This is the story of Rolex watches. In Germany, a 12-year-old Hans Wilsdorf became an orphan after his parents' death. And in his future, there was only darkness. Such a situation, his relatives sold his parents' business and put him in a boarding school. During school, he befriended a boy from Switzerland who told him a lot about the watchmaking industry in Switzerland. And after knowing all this, Hans realized that his future is in this industry. So in 1900, at the age of 19, he left Germany and left for Switzerland. In Switzerland, he got a job in a watchmaking company called Chronometer. Here, his job was to check the accuracy of hundreds of pocket watches daily. And while doing this work, his passion for making perfect watches developed. In 1903, he decided to settle in London. But in this journey, he met with a big incident. All 33,000 German gold marks from his parents were stolen. This was a big setback for him. But he had no option other than moving ahead. After reaching London, he found a job in another watchmaking company in sales and marketing. And in the next 2 years in the watchmaking industry, he learned a lot about manufacturing, sales, and most importantly, consumer behavior. He realized that all the watchmaking companies are focusing on making their watches fancy and decorative, while customers wanted simple, accurate, durable, and watched watches. And to change this situation, at the age of 24, he decided to start his own watchmaking business. But there was a problem. To start a business, Hans did not have sufficient capital. So he made his brother-in-law his business partner instead of capital. And similarly, in 1905, Wilsdorf Davis was established. First of all, he saw that travelers need to carry a watch so that they can catch trains or buses on time and reach their destination on time. That's why he specifically decided to make a pocket watch for travelers. He kept the size of this watch small compared to normal watches, so that travelers can easily carry it. And along with it, his pouch was made of high-quality leather, so that it looks premium and does not break while traveling. He named this watch as Portfolio Pocket Watch. And according to the company's first product, it was quite successful, even though Hans started the company by making a pocket watch. But he did not want to make pocket watches forever. His prediction was that wristwatches would completely replace pocket watches in the future. That's why Hans put all his focus on making world-class wristwatches. But the problem was that customers at that time were not ready to accept wristwatches. Their perception was that wristwatches are only worn by females, but Hans wanted to change this perception of the customer. In 1906, Hans saw that both males and females in Britain liked to wear bracelets. And here he spotted a big opportunity. He launched silver and gold wristwatches in the market, whose straps were not leather but gold and silver, which looked exactly like bracelets. Along with it, he did not call these watches wristwatches, but he branded them as bracelet watches. And because of this strategy, his watches became popular in the whole of Britain. During this time, Hans saw that the name of the maker was written on all the watches in the market. But now Hans wanted his watches to have a name of its own, a name that would fit neatly on the face of the watch and could be pronounced easily in any language. He combined different alphabets and made more than 100 names. And in the same way, a pleasant-sounding name came to his mind. That name was Rolex. In 1908, he trademarked it. By the way, wristwatches are still used not only to see time, but also to enhance our overall looks and personality. But even an expensive watch cannot boost your looks and confidence. If your teeth are misaligned or have gaps in your teeth, because a perfect smile and well-aligned teeth are very important for a first impression. The common solution for teeth alignment is to wear metal braces, but it is very painful to wear them. And they also look unattractive. There are a lot of food restrictions, and it becomes difficult to maintain oral hygiene. That's why Tusi has brought invisible teeth aligners, which straightens your crooked teeth. and also closes the gaps between the teeth. In comparison, the traditional braces, their treatment time is also less, approximately 6 to 12 months. And because they are invisible, no one will know that you have applied them. Also, there is no pain in using them. And finally, it can be easily removed while eating. It is also very simple to make them. Simply download Toothsy app on your phone and book their free 3D teeth scan. You can do this scan at your home or at Toothsy's experience centers, whichever is convenient for you. Then in a few days, your customized aligners will be delivered to you in this cute little red box. Toothsy has designed smiles for more than 3 lakh Indians because of its revolutionary product and customer service. So the result is guaranteed. So click on the link in the description and download the Toothsy app to book your free 3D scan right now. The sales of Rolex watches were quite good, but their accuracy problem was still not completely solved. Actually, the movements of wristwatches were quite small, because of which no one had succeeded in making a perfectly accurate movement. Until 1910, Hans imported his watch movements from Switzerland. But now Hans decided to make his own movement. He immersed himself in the study of horology, met with expert watchmakers from all over the world, and made himself an expert in movements, and then developed his first wristwatch movement, 15-line caliber 200. He sent it to the official Chronometer testing institute in Switzerland for certification. There were rigorous tests on it, after which it became the first wristwatch movement in the world to get a Chronometer certificate. Basically, Hans made the world's most accurate wristwatch movement. Because of this innovation, Rolex's reputation increased a lot. And now his watches were exported not only to Britain, but also to other European countries. Until 1914, Hans had set up multiple offices of Wilsdorf Davis in Britain. He had also prepared a team of more than 60 exceptional people, and the business was growing continuously. But then a major event put a break in his growth story. World War I. To pay for the war, the British government imposed an export duty of 33% on watches, because of which the prices of Rolex increased by 33% compared to foreign competitors, and their sales crashed. To survive this crisis, had to shift his entire company from Britain to Switzerland. Till now, Rolex was only the name of his watch brand. But after coming to Switzerland, he also limited his company's name to Rolex Watch and restarted many of his business operations from scratch. Because of the war, the luxury watch market had crashed. But then Hans observed a very interesting trend. Suddenly, there was a huge demand for wristwatches from the armies fighting in World War I. Actually, during the war, it is very important for all the soldiers to watch the time, so that they can properly coordinate their actions, like when to fire, when to move forward, etc. In such a situation, it was not practical to use pocket watches to watch the time. Because to watch the time, the soldiers had to keep their rifles down, open their coats, and then take out the watch. That's why the army started shifting to wristwatches, in which it was very easy to watch the time. Seeing this, Rolex launched this trench watches for the soldiers. The glass of these watches was unbreakable and the body was very strong. And it had a luminescent radium hour hand so that the soldiers could watch the time even in low light. These trench watches helped Rolex to do good business during the war. Soldiers of World War I were considered heroes in their own countries. And when people saw their heroes wearing wristwatches, they also started shifting to wristwatches. And as Hans had thought, wristwatches completely replaced pocket watches. But there was still a big problem in wristwatches. Their accuracy used to deteriorate if dust or water goes inside them. And Hans now wanted to solve this problem. He decided to make a watch case that is very tight. So tight that its movement will never be damaged by dust, heat, and most importantly, water. Hans saw that all watches are still made with a snap-on mechanism. Thus, the components of the watch are simply fitted on top of each other and assembled, just like a tiffin box is assembled. But because of this, there are small gaps in the watch due to which dust and water go inside. That's why Rolex designed a watch case with a screw-on mechanism for the first time, in which there were grooves in the watch components, because of which they did not fit together but were tightly screwed. Along with that, there were rubber rings on every important point, so that the remaining gaps are also filled. Finally, the winding crown of this watch tightly sealed the whole body like a submarine hatch. This watch could remain in the water for an unlimited time without any internal damage, just like an oyster. And that's why it was named Oyster. the Rolex Oyster. This watch, launched in 1926, was revolutionary, and that's why revolutionary marketing was needed to promote it. Hans came to know that there is a swimmer named Mercedes Gleitz, whose claim was that she was the first woman to cross the English Channel by swimming. But many people had considered this claim to be false. That's why they declared to prove themselves that they will cross the English Channel again. And this time, in front of the media of the whole world, Hans contacted Mercedes and gave them an offer to become the first Rolex brand ambassador to promote the waterproof capabilities of the Rolex Oyster. Mercedes was going to keep the watch attached to her necklace during her swim. Her attempt started quite well. And after swimming for about 10 hours, she covered about 80% of the distance of the English Channel. But unfortunately, she was exhausted after that. That's why she was rescued at that time. Her swim was not successful, but when the Rolex Oyster was checked, it was in perfect working condition. Even after the unsuccessful attempt, Mercedes Gleitz became popular all around due to her efforts. And along with her, the world's first waterproof watch, Rolex Oyster, became popular. Hans showed Mercedes and Rolex in his ads as well. Apart from this, Hans displayed the Oyster in a fish tank with all the retailers of Rolex, which also had real fishes. In 1928, he hired Miss Evelyn Leigh, a top British actress, as a brand ambassador. Even in his ads, Evelyn wore a Rolex Oyster and her hand was in a fish tank. Due to such a unique marketing strategy, Rolex Oyster's waterproofing features became very popular, and it took Rolex's success to the next level. But where the whole world was praising Hans and Rolex, Hans was still not satisfied. Actually, the watches of that time were completely mechanical watches. That means they didn't get power from any battery, but from a main spring. Basically, this main spring had to be tightened by rotating the crown of the watch. After being fully tightened, the spring would slowly unwind and run the watch's threads. Simply speaking, it worked like a toy with a key. These watches had to be winded every 2 days. And in the case of the Oyster, if the crown was not properly tightened after winding, water could enter. That's why Hans's next goal was to make a fully automatic watch. Hans kept solving this problem for years. And finally, he invented the Perpetual Rotor. It was basically a semicircular rotor that could rotate 360 degrees inside the watch. This rotor was connected to the main spring through multiple gears. In daily life, when the person wearing the watch moved his hand or wrist, then this rotor would rotate. Then this energy was transferred through gears and ultimately the main spring would tighten. That means only by wearing the watch, the main spring would win. This watch could run automatically forever. That is, perpetually. And that's why it was named the Rolex Oyster Perpetual. There have been many attempts to make such automatic watches before, but Rolex was the first to make it so successfully. Perpetual made Rolex, and hence Wilsdorf, a legend in the watchmaking world. But then, a very big problem came in 1939. World War II. Due to the war, the entire world's supply chain was disrupted, and Rolex sales crashed again. For the next few years, after all the difficulties, Hans ensured the survival of Rolex. But then another tragedy happened. His wife died in 1944. The last 6 years were the most challenging time of Hans's life. But after facing such challenges since childhood, he had developed a fighter mindset. That's why he regrouped his energy and went back to the work in which he was the world's best. That is, making world-class watches. In 1945, Rolex celebrated its 40th anniversary. And on this occasion, he launched Rolex Datejust, which was the world's first automatic waterproof watch, in which the date was also visible. But there was a problem. Some people complained that due to the small display of the date, they had a problem in seeing the date. As always, Hans started finding a solution to this. It is said that one day a drop of water fell on his watch, due to which the date began to look magnified. Inspired by this, he added 2.5x magnifying glass on Datejust watches. And this problem was also solved. Till 1960, Rolex launched many other revolutionary watches. Like in 1953, Rolex Explorer was launched. which was basically a strong and unbreakable watch for mountaineers and explorers, so that they don't have to worry about the damage of the watch. In 1955, Rolex's GMT Master was launched, which had a rotating bezel. This watch was mainly for pilots, because pilots have to track different time zones while flying, and they could do this through this bezel. And finally, in 1960, an experimental watch named Rolex's Deep Sea Special was launched, which was designed to withstand the extreme water pressure of the deep sea. To test this in 1960, the deepest known ocean point at that time, which was about 11,000 meters deep, was taken there, and it was working perfectly even in that depth. With this, Rolex had established itself as the king of watches, whether it was the height of Mount Everest or the deepest point of the sea. Only one watch brand had the capability to with every extreme condition of the world, and that was Rolex. Hans had achieved all those things with Rolex, which no other watchmaker could even dream of achieving. With this, in 1960, Hans Wilsdorf said goodbye to the world at the age of 79, but left behind a watch brand that immortalized him forever. This was the story of Rolex.